Hey everyone, my name is Daniel. I am 28 years old, and I am from Mexico. 6 months ago, English was not just difficult for me. It was my biggest fear. I want you to imagine this clearly. I was not completely new to English. I could read a little. I knew some basic words. When I watched movies or short videos, I could sometimes guess the meaning. I understood bits and pieces. But understanding and speaking are two very different things. Whenever it was time to speak, my mind went completely blank. It felt like all the words I knew suddenly disappeared. My heart started beating faster. My throat felt dry. Even the simplest sentences felt heavy, like they were stuck inside me. My mouth wanted to speak, but the words refused to come out. Sometimes I practiced sentences in my head. They sounded perfect there, but the moment I tried to say them out loud, everything fell apart. My pronunciation felt wrong. My grammar felt broken. I felt embarrassed before I even opened my mouth. Because of this fear, I avoided speaking English whenever I could. I stayed silent in conversations. I nodded instead of answering. I smiled instead of speaking. Deep inside, I felt frustrated and disappointed in myself. But today, things are different. Today, I speak English confidently. I can express my thoughts. I can share my ideas. I can have conversations without panic or fear. And the most surprising part is this: I did not go abroad to learn English. I did not move to an English-speaking country. I did not join any expensive course. I did not have a private teacher correcting me every day. What I did have was determination. What I did have was a decision to change. That is why this is not just my story. This is your story if you feel stuck right now. If you feel shy when speaking. If you feel embarrassed because your English is not perfect. If you think you are slow or not talented enough. This story is for you, because I was exactly where you are. Confused, afraid, doubting myself, and everything changed when one moment forced me to face the truth about my English and my future. So let me take you back to the moment that changed everything, the failure that woke me up. At that time, I was working as a graphic designer. Design was not just my job. It was my passion. I loved creating logos, posters, and visual ideas. I spent hours improving my skills, learning new tools, and building my portfolio. I was creative, focused, and hardworking. Deep inside, I believed my work was good enough to compete with anyone. One day, I saw a job post for a remote graphic designer at a European company. The salary was much higher than what I was earning. The company was international. The projects looked exciting. It felt like the opportunity I had been waiting for. I applied immediately, full of hope. A few days later, I received an email saying I had passed the portfolio round. They liked my work. They appreciated my creativity. I felt proud of myself. All those late nights suddenly felt worth it. The next step was the interview. Then came the interview day. I sat in front of my laptop, trying to stay calm. The interviewer appeared on the screen, smiled warmly and said, "Hi Daniel, can you introduce yourself?" At that exact moment, My heart started racing. I knew who I was. I knew my experience. I knew my skills. I had done this introduction many times in my head. But when I tried to speak in English, everything fell apart. I am designer. I make logos. I have experience. That was all I could say. My voice sounded weak. My sentences were broken. The confidence I felt inside could not come out in words. I could feel the silence growing heavier. With every second, the interviewer remained polite and respectful, but I could see it in their eyes. I knew the truth even before the interview ended. 2 days later, I received the email. We have decided to move forward with another candidate. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the wall. I wasn't angry at the company. I wasn't angry at anyone else. I was angry at myself. For the first time, I clearly understood something painful but real. Talent without English is invisible. It doesn't matter how skilled you are if you cannot express yourself. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would learn English. No excuses. No more running away. Month 1. Breaking the fear. The first month of my English journey was not about fluency. It was not about perfect grammar or advanced vocabulary. It was about breaking fear. I made a clear decision to change my approach. I stopped memorizing grammar rules that confused me. I stopped watching random English lessons. That made me feel motivated. For one day and lost the next. I realized that knowledge without action was useless. So I chose action. Instead of waiting to feel ready, I focused on speaking first. Every morning, I started talking to myself in English. Not in my head, but out loud. At first, it felt strange and uncomfortable. I felt silly speaking alone in my room. But I reminded myself that this was my safe space. No one could judge me here. When I brushed my teeth, I said, I am brushing my teeth. When I changed my clothes, I said, I am getting ready for work. When I felt scared, I said, I feel nervous, but I am learning. These were simple sentences, but they had power. They trained my mouth to move. They trained my brain to connect thoughts with words. Slowly, English stopped feeling foreign. I also created something. I called my daily survival sentences. I wrote 40 simple sentences that I could use in real life. Sentences like asking for help, introducing myself, or saying I didn't understand. Every day, I repeated these sentences again and again. I didn't repeat them once or twice. I repeated them until they felt natural. I made mistakes every day. My pronunciation was wrong. My grammar was not perfect. Sometimes I mixed words from my native language. But I made one important rule for myself. I would not stop because of mistakes. I stopped caring about being correct. I started caring about movement. Movement meant speaking, even if it was broken. Movement meant trying, even if it was uncomfortable. Some days I felt progress. Other days I felt stuck, but I never stopped. By the end of the first month, something changed inside me. The fear was still there, but it was smaller. It no longer controlled me. I could open my mouth and speak without panic. The fear was not gone, but it was weaker. And that was enough to move forward. Month 2 and 3. Training my brain. After breaking my fear in the first month, I knew it was time to train my brain to think and speak faster in English. I could now say simple sentences, but my speaking was still slow. I was still translating in my head. That was the next problem I needed to fix. This is when I started using the question-answer method. Every day, I asked myself simple questions in English. What did I do today? What did I eat? What made me happy? At first, my answers were very short. I worked. I ate rice. I felt good. But I didn't stop there. I forced myself to add more details. I worked on a design project. I ate rice and vegetables for lunch. I felt happy because I finished my work. I answered out loud, not silently. Again and again. Some days I repeated the same questions for 30 minutes. It felt repetitive, but it worked. Slowly, my brain started responding in English. Without asking for permission. Something important happened during these months. My brain stopped translating from my native language. The words began to appear naturally. English started flowing instead of being pushed. Along with this, I practiced shadowing every single day. I listened to English from movies, podcasts, and interviews. I paused after each sentence and repeated it exactly the same way. Same speed, same tone, same emotion. I wasn't just copying words. I was copying confidence. If the speaker sounded calm, I sounded calm. If the speaker sounded excited, I sounded excited. At first, it was difficult. My tongue felt tired. My pronunciation felt strange. But I kept going day after day. After a few weeks, I noticed something amazing. My pronunciation improved. My sentences sounded smoother. My confidence increased. Then one day, someone said something that changed everything. Your English sounds clear. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't native. But it was clear. That sentence hit me deeply. It proved that my hard work was working. For the first time, I felt that English was no longer my enemy. It was becoming my tool. Those 2 months transformed my brain, my voice, and my confidence. Month 4, thinking in English. By the time I reached the 4th month, something important had changed. English no longer felt completely strange to me. I could speak, I could answer questions, but there was still one big barrier left. Thinking in my native language first, and then translating into English. This made my speech slow and unnatural. So my goal for month 4 was simple, but powerful. I would think in English. The first thing I did was change my phone's language to English. At first, this small change felt uncomfortable. Simple actions like opening settings or reading notifications took more time. But that discomfort was exactly what I needed. Every time I touched my phone, I was forced to read and understand English. Without realizing it, my brain started accepting English as normal. Next, I started writing a daily journal in English. Every night before sleeping, I wrote about my day. At first, the sentences were very simple. Today I went to work. I was tired. I ate dinner and watched a video. I didn't try to sound smart. I tried to be honest. Slowly, my sentences became longer. My ideas became clearer. Writing helped me organize my thoughts in English without pressure. During the day, I also described the world around me in English. When I looked at the sky, I said, "The sky is cloudy." When I waited for transport, I said, "The bus is late." When I felt exhausted but motivated, I said, "I feel tired but hopeful." I didn't say these sentences quietly in my head. I said them clearly in my mind, as if English was my natural language. This habit trained my brain to observe life through English words. Something beautiful happened during this month. English stopped feeling like a school subject. It was no longer something I studied for exams or rules. English became part of my daily life. Like breathing or walking, I started noticing English everywhere. In signs, messages, songs, and thoughts. I didn't panic anymore when I heard English. I welcomed it. Month 5 and 6. Real conversations. By the time I entered month 5, I knew I could no longer practice alone. I could speak to myself. I could answer questions. I could think in English. But real fluency only comes from real conversations. And that was the most frightening step of all. So I joined online speaking groups, where people from different countries met to practice English. On the first day, my hands were shaking. My heart was beating fast. I was afraid that others would speak better than me. I was afraid I would freeze. I was afraid of making mistakes in front of strangers. At first, I only listened. I watched others speak. Some were fluent. Some struggled. Some made mistakes just like me. That was when I realized something important. Everyone was scared. Everyone was learning. No one was perfect. That realization gave me courage. So I spoke anyway. My voice was not perfect. My sentences were not smooth. Sometimes I paused. Sometimes I searched for words. But I kept speaking, and something surprising happened. Mistakes happened, but nobody laughed. People listened patiently. Some even helped me find the right words. Others made mistakes too, and we all smiled together. The fear I had built in my head for so long slowly disappeared. With every conversation, my confidence grew. I started speaking faster. I started expressing ideas more clearly. I stopped apologizing for my English. I stopped saying, "Sorry, my English is bad." Instead, I spoke with courage. During these 2 months, I made English friends from different countries. We talked about our lives, our work, our dreams. English was no longer practice. It was communication. It was connection. I also started using English in daily life whenever possible. At work, in messages, in short calls. Even small conversations mattered. Each one made me stronger. By the end of month 6, something inside me had changed completely. English no longer controlled me. I controlled it. I was not fearless, but I was brave. And bravery is more powerful than perfection. These 2 months taught me one final lesson. Confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes because you speak. And once confidence grows, fluency follows. The result: 6 months later, I stood at a place I once thought was impossible for me. With a calm mind and steady confidence, I applied for another international job. This time, fear was not in control. I was nervous, yes, but I was ready. When the interview day arrived, everything felt different. I didn't rehearse sentences again and again in my head. I didn't panic about grammar or pronunciation. I focused on sharing my ideas. When the interviewer asked questions, I spoke freely. The words came naturally. I explained my experience, my creative process, and my past projects clearly and confidently. I wasn't searching for words anymore. I wasn't translating in my head. I was communicating. For the first time, English felt like a tool, not an obstacle. The interviewer listened carefully. They nodded. They asked follow-up questions. The conversation flowed naturally, like a real discussion between professionals. When the interview ended, I closed my laptop with a quiet smile. No matter the result, I knew I had given my best. A week later, I received the email. I read it slowly, my hands shaking. They had chosen me. I got the offer. In that moment, I didn't jump or shout. I just sat there silent, letting the feeling sink in. 6 months ago, I couldn't even introduce myself properly in English. And now, my words had opened a door to a new future. That moment taught me something powerful. English didn't change my life. I changed my life by learning English. English was never the real problem. Fear was. Doubt was. Inaction was. Once I decided to act every day, even when it felt uncomfortable, everything began to change. If you are reading this and thinking, I can't do it, I want you to know something important. I once believed the same thing. I was scared I was stuck. But I started anyway. If I can do it, so can you. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need expensive courses. You need one decision. Start today.